Greetings, creatures of the night and lovers of the unknown. This is your host from your favorite channel of chills, Nightbourne Fear, the place where your worst nightmares come to life. Before we dim the lights and begin today's dark journey, how about you summon that sinister light to show you're ready? And if you're new here and love feeling that chill run down your spine, waste no time and subscribe to the channel, joining our Legion of Fear. Narrator, in the heart of the city, where shadows stretch long and the lights rarely reach, there was a forgotten street, a place that seemed to exist outside of time. The old houses with peeling facades and shuttered windows seemed to hold secrets no one dared unravel. At the end of this street, almost invisible in the shadows, stood the antique shop. Its name, nearly erased by the dust of time, was barely legible. Relics of the past. Few knew of its existence, and even fewer dared to speak of it. It was said to be a place where the owner didn't trade in objects, but in fears. Old, hidden fears. The ones people tried to bury in the deepest recesses of their minds. The urban legend circulated by word of mouth. Just another rumor among many, but with a peculiar weight that made people lower their voices when mentioning it. It was told that one night, a man entered the antique shop looking for an old watch to gift his grandfather. He was never seen again. Others spoke of a couple who, driven by curiosity, entered the place and ran out screaming, eyes wide with terror, never speaking of what they saw. So feeling the mood darken already, if this introduction has already hooked you, show your spectral support with a like. Some believed the owner possessed a sinister gift, an ability to know each person's worst fears and make them real. Others said the antique shop was a portal to another world, a place where the boundaries between the real and the imaginary dissolved. What kind of place do you think it was? Leave your theories in the comments below. But, as always happens, human. Curiosity is stronger than fear. A group of young people, skeptical and eager to challenge the unknown, decided to investigate the place. There were 4 friends. Lucia, the group leader, determined and brave, but with a secret she kept under lock and key. Mateus, the skeptic, who didn't believe in ghost stories or supernatural entities. Beatrice, the most sensitive of the group, who felt something was wrong but couldn't explain what. And Raphael, the jokester, who thought exploring the antique shop was fun, until the shop's door creaked with a sound that froze his smile. The night was cold and damp, with a thin fog enveloping the streets like a shroud. The group gathered in front of the antique shop, looking at the decaying facade. The dark wooden door, with a tinkling bell, seemed to grin sinisterly. Lucia took a deep breath and pushed the door, which opened with the sound of creaking wood. "Let's get this over with," she said, more to herself than to her friends. Would you have their same courage or recklessness? If the answer is yes, maybe you belong here. Consider subscribing so you don't miss any macabre adventures. The inside of the antique shop was even more unsettling than the outside. Dusty shelves, old vases, portraits of stern-faced people, and marble busts that seemed to watch every move. In the center of the room, a spiral staircase descended into the basement, shrouded in shadows. The air smelled of mold and something unknown, an odor that made one's head spin. Beatrice coughed, covering her nose with her shirt, and looked around with wide eyes. "This place, it's alive," she whispered. "Does the feeling of a living place creep you out? If so, manifest with a like on this video. We want to know how many brave souls are with us." Mateus, ever the skeptic, laughed. "Alive? This is just an old abandoned shop." But his words sounded hollow. Raphael, who had entered last, closed the door behind him, and the sound echoed in the room like thunder. "Let's find the owner," Lucia proposed, but no one answered. Instead, a heavy silence fell over the group, as if the air itself was listening. It was then that they began to hear the sounds. Whispers, faint but clear, indistinct words that seemed to come from all sides. Beatrice grabbed Raphael's arm and Mateus looked around, his confident expression starting to crumble. "What was that?" he asked, but no one answered. Lucia took a step forward, her eyes fixed on the dark staircase. "We need to get out of here," she said, but it was too late. The whispers grew, becoming a stream of voices that seemed to come from inside their own heads. Each of them heard something different, something that deeply disturbed them. If those whispers started in your head, what fear would they awaken? Share, if you dare, in the comments. Beatrice heard the sound of scratching, like nails on wood, coming from a place she couldn't pinpoint. Raphael felt footsteps behind him, getting closer and closer, but whenever he turned, no one was there. Mateus heard laughter that sounded like his younger sister's, who had died years ago. And Lucia heard her own name being called, in a voice she recognized, but couldn't remember whose it was. "What's happening?" Beatrice asked, her voice trembling. "We need..." And then the lights went out. The exact moment the lights went out, the air seemed to thicken, making each breath a struggle. The darkness was alive, a palpable entity that coiled around them, tightening chests and suffocating the screams trying to escape. Lucia, still trying to stay calm, stumbled forward, her arms outstretched like blind antennae. "Does anyone have a lighter? A flashlight?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm enough to cut the silence. "Is total darkness one of your fears? If so, hit that like button right now. Let's see how many share this dread." Mateus, who always boasted of his skepticism, felt a shiver run down his spine. "This isn't right," he whispered, his confidence evaporating like steam. Beatrice, clinging to Raphael's arm, let out a muffled groan. "What's happening? What's happening?" she repeated, her words blending into the shadows that seemed to move around them. Raphael, the eternal jokester, tried to force a joke, but the words died in his throat. Instead, he heard footsteps, light, consistent footsteps, coming from somewhere, behind him. "Is someone there?" he asked, his voice trembling. There was no answer, but the footsteps continued, echoing in the room with a sinister cadence. Footsteps in the dark, classic but always effective. If you're tense about where this story is going, don't hesitate to subscribe to ensure you don't miss the conclusion and future nights of terror. The darkness was a cloak that enveloped them, making every sound amplified. Every movement seemed threatening. Lucia, trying to maintain control, took a step forward, but her foot hit something on the floor. She bent down, her fingers finding a cold, metallic object. "What's this?" she murmured, her hand closing around it. It was a key, small and rusted, with a skull-shaped keychain. She pocketed it, a dark foreboding settling in her stomach. Meanwhile, Mateus heard laughter. A girl's laughter, soft and melodious, reminiscent of his younger sister who had passed away years ago. "Anna?" he called out, his voice trembling. "Anna, is that you?" The laughter stopped, and in the ensuing silence he heard his name being called, in a voice that both was and wasn't his sister's. "Mateus, Mateus." The voice was sweet, but there was something about it that made his skin crawl. Beatrice, meanwhile, felt a weight on her chest, as if something was pressing down, making it hard to breathe. She heard scratching like nails on wood, coming from somewhere nearby. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What is that?" Raphael, trying to hold her hand, felt it slip away. "Beatrice, hold on!" he pleaded, but she was motionless, her eyes wide, fixed on something only she could see. The situation is getting desperate for them. What do you think Beatrice is seeing? Leave your theory in the comments. Your interaction feeds the shadows and the channel. The darkness seemed to shift, as if it were a living creature. Lucia, still, holding the key, sensed a presence behind her. She turned, but saw nothing. "We need to get out of here," she said, her voice firm. "Now!" But no one moved. Fear had paralyzed them, turning them into statues of ice, in the midst of the darkness. It was then they heard the sound, a low guttural sound that seemed to come from all directions. "Welcome to my collection," a voice said, echoing in the room. "You're going to love it here." The voice was smooth, almost welcoming, but there was a malice in it that made their blood run cold. "The collector," Beatrice whispered, her words almost inaudible. "He's here. The collector finally reveals himself. If this revelation sent shivers down your spine, show it by hitting that like button hard." The darkness seemed to close in even tighter, as if the night itself was closing around them. Lucia, trying to stay calm, took a step forward, but felt something on the floor. It was a door, hidden beneath the dust and darkness. She opened it, revealing a long, dark corridor lined with wooden doors. "Let's go," she said, her voice firm. "Let's get out of here." But looking back, she saw that Beatrice was no longer there. "Beatrice?" she called out, her voice echoing down the corridor. There was no answer. In her place, there was only the sound of scratching, growing louder, coming from the end of the corridor. Lucia felt a chill run down her spine. "We have to find her," she said, her voice trembling. "Now." Beatrice is gone. This is getting worse and worse. To not miss any sinister details of this or other stories, make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell activated. And so they entered the corridor, each step echoing in the darkness. The key Lucia had found seemed to glow faintly in the dark, as if guiding her somewhere. The air was cold, and the smell of mold was stronger than ever. They knew they were being watched, that something was accompanying them, but they didn't know what. The darkness felt alive, and each step took them deeper into the heart of the collector's collection. And then, at the end of the corridor, they saw a door. It was closed, but Lucia's key seemed a perfect match for the lock. She turned it, and the door opened with a creaking sound. On the other side, there was a room full of objects, each stranger than the last. There were paintings with portraits of people who seemed to be looking at them, vases with withered flowers, and a large mirror in the center of the room. And in the center of it all, there was a figure, motionless and silent. "What is that?" Raphael asked, his voice trembling. "What is that?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned, revealing a face that was both familiar and unknown. It was Beatrice, or at least something that looked like Beatrice. Her eyes were black as coal, and her skin was pale and cold. "Welcome to my home," she said, her voice low and sinister. "You're never leaving." What a terrifying twist. Their friend is now part of the horror. If your heart skipped a beat, smash that like button. Let's see your reaction to this twist. Lucia felt a scream rise in her throat, but it got stuck. She tried to run, but her legs were paralyzed. Fear had consumed her, turning her into a statue of ice. Matthias, meanwhile, felt tears streaming down his face. "Anna," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Anna, is that you?" The figure that looked like Beatrice smiled, revealing sharp teeth. "No," she said. "I am what's left of her." What's left of her. Chilling. Comment below what you think will happen to Lucia, Matthias, and Raphael now. We want to know your darkest predictions. And so, the friends realized they were trapped in a nightmare from which they could not wake. The antique shop was a place where fears became reality, where the most painful memories were relived, and where hope was just an illusion. They knew they needed to find a way out, but every step took them deeper into the heart of the collector's collection. And deep down, they knew they would never be the same. In summary, the friends' journey through the antique shop revealed a place where the deepest fears become reality, and curiosity can lead to terrible consequences. Each of them faced their worst nightmares, and the presence of the collector kept them trapped in a circle of terror from which there seemed no escape. The old shop, with its heavy air and unknown odors, transformed into a labyrinth of fears, where every object and every sound were painful memories that couldn't be ignored. The motionless figure in the center of the room, once Beatrice, symbolized the loss of identity and absorption by darkness. The key Lucia found represented a fragile hope of escape, but also a reminder that sometimes the solutions to our problems can lie in the most unexpected things. However, the figure's movement and the collector's sinister words made it clear that escape would not be easy, and that every step they took led them deeper into the heart of the collection. Faced with this grim scenario, we are left to reflect: what are our deepest fears? Would we be able to face them if they became reality, or would we risk becoming just another item in someone's collection? This story leaves us thinking and trembling. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave that final like if the story moved you, and share your reflections in the comments.